Yes, hello, folks. Welcome to the weekly Manchester United podcast on this Monday afternoon here in California. And you're in where? You're in Colorado, aren't you, James?
Yeah, just around Denver.
It's around Denver. You're an hour ahead of me, aren't you? So was it 1 or 2 hours ahead of me?
Just an hour, just an
An
hour.
hour.
Mountain time. One of the few places you'll ever meet somebody in Mountain
Glad you
Time.
wish you were about 12 months ahead of me, so you didn't have to go through everything what United are about to go through. At least it'll be about 2 weeks ahead of me, so you didn't have to go through what is going to happen this weekend. Of course, this is another Monday episode of the weekly Manchester United show. Um, as usual, just like last week, could have been a happy week, ended up being a depressing
Yep,
week. Had we recorded this podcast on Thursday, we'd have been in the same place we were in after Everton,
yep,
where you're thinking good result, good performance, something to build on. And then, of course, they go out and do what they did last weekend against Newcastle and this weekend against Bournemouth and repeated what was an absolutely disgraceful performance. We'll talk about that, man. We'll talk about a few other things. Um, as you know, and as everyone else that listens to this podcast knows, I've been a big defender of Ten Hag. Um, I know he's not perfect. I know there's certain parts of him that he deserves legitimate criticism. But this was the first week I was really angry at him, and I don't want to be negative, but when I saw that team, I was angry, and I thought to myself, how does Anthony Martial make it on a football pitch for Manchester United after what he did at Newcastle? I mean, what he did at Newcastle should be career death sentence at any top football club. He never should be allowed on the pitch again. Because I'm not asking, I understand when you're a Manchester United striker, central striker, the service is atrocious. We'll get into that. So, okay, if you don't score, but walking through games, half-paced jog through games, no intensity in the press, no real desire to get the ball, same pace. That is an absolute disgrace that you're on the pitch for Manchester United. And Ten Hag, I'm sorry, but you deserve everything. I mean, the fact that he was hooked in 55 minutes was entirely predictable because I knew that before he went on the field. Diogo Dalot is another one that should not be on a pitch for Manchester United. I'm trying to understand how Wan-Bissaka isn't being picked. And Diogo Dalot concedes the same goal every single week for exactly the same reason. The second goal that United conceded, James, night game, watch Dalot. Watch how
yep.
he doesn't press the ball. He stands off his player, lets him take time, lifts his head, lets him put the cross in, and then, of course, there's weak defender in the box. Against Chelsea, he almost conceded. Bro had the back post. Same goal he's conceded against Galatasaray. Same goal he conceded against Copenhagen. The same goal that was conceded against Newcastle, although it was Wan-Bissaka in that season, from falling asleep at the ball and not watching what's coming over their shoulder. And the other thing that infuriated me about Dalot was when he had that shot instead of crossing it to
Yep,
Holland.
yep.
Lastly, I want you to, I don't know if you've done this yet, but take a look at the United players after they concede. And take a look at the body language. And I know we say this a lot, but they look like players that just conceded in a five-a-side. They just, I
Yeah,
mean, the sheer indifference. It's like hands in the air, turn around, walk the halfway line. Like this, that what they did at the weekend is an absolute disgrace.
yeah, and it is frustrating because a lot of the problems you can see are essentially of their own making at this point in time. There's a lot of things that can be done about a lot of the issues that are occurring. That second goal I remember because I also highlighted that. I was talking to somebody and looked at it and said, you've got I think it was Billings, right, who scores, who's
Mhm.
what, 6'5", 6'6", and you've got Shaw at center back, who's not very tall, not a big guy. Um, Billings is free running into the box, and instead of pressing, instead of closing down the cross, there's no way that Luke Shaw is going to beat him to that ball. I don't care how close he is to him, how tight he is to him. There's no way he's beating him to it. Player running at momentum into pace in there. And these are problems of your own making, these types of things. I mean, it's just kind of across the pitch, and the team selections become baffling because there's very little consistency. And I think that would be, and I mean, when I say consistency, I mean consistency in why players are being dropped and why players are being
Yeah, no, it's fair.
selected. And I understand why. Let's look at it this way in terms of every manager has the right to choose on certain things, but you do live and die by those things. Unfortunately, that's just how it is. What you have available. Um, we've been playing, for example, I think the three major areas that stand out to me that continue to be a problem, going back to that second goal, was selecting Luke Shaw as a left-footed center back, and then we don't play out the back. We just go long anyway. What's the point? So we lose on set pieces. We lose on crosses, 2 balls into the box, where you have a much more effective player at defending those in Rafael Varane sitting on the bench, mostly down to the reason being given of footedness and passing. But even that second goal came off Luke Shaw making a mistake passing out the back. He was up advanced in a left back kind of position, passed the ball into the middle. A pass he probably makes dozens of times as a left back, and can get back in position, but as a center back, a lot more dangerous. The first goal, I think, came off of a clearance into the middle, and there's a few like that. That's a problem of its own making. Wan-Bissaka, I think, was one of the keys to last season being successful in the way that it was. He really grew into it in the second half of the season, really took hold of the position. I think when he plays, there's the instance where you'll see him fall asleep, but the rest of the game, he tends to be very aggressive, very challenging, not allowing the ball into the area. And we've seen, I think, almost a goal per game come through Diogo Dalot's position through the last couple of months. And then there's the factor of this whole goal scoring situation. I understand why Marcus Rashford was dropped. I understand that. It makes sense to me. I don't understand why Tony Martial plays. If you're going to have a game off, we don't even play the way that it would work for Anthony Martial to play. Anthony's not going to run ahead of him.
There's no way it would work for Anthony Martial.
I just don't see it. It makes no sense.
No way it would work for him at all. The guy should not be on a professional football pitch.
Yeah, it's been 3 years, right, since he's played in 90 minutes. I don't see it. I don't get it. And obviously then there's this whole issue with the midfield of playing Scott McTominay for the goals. And I get it. I understand why you want to play him when you have not a lot of options right now in terms of personnel, of course. But the way that he's been essentially utilized, I mean, for years, Scott McTominay was utilized as a deep defender in a 2. That actually was quite successful in terms of shoring up the defense. The way he's playing now is a position that I don't think exists in the Premier League, which is sort of this almost essentially a second striker. The midfield tends to be totally vacated, and it's not even to pick on McTominay too much because there's things he's good at and there's things he's not, and he's obviously following and attending to instruction. But against Chelsea, there were 3 or 4 chances on the break. Against Galatasaray, there were 3 or 4 chances on the break. Against Bournemouth, the manager said it himself. We know they're going to be open in transition, and we're going to get them there, and that's where we scored our goals. Everybody knows it. It's the worst kept secret in England that Manchester United, you just hit them on the transition. You just wait for them to send all these men forward, for McTominay to run in the box, for Bruno to get in the box, for the strikers and everybody to be all around the front, and then you just run in behind them, and they can't do anything about it. And these are structural problems that are really poor, that I don't know how you resolve. And one of the issues is that a lot of times the points table can be confusing, and it can really throw things off a bit. One of the greatest problems I think we've had with Ten Hag is that there's been too much pressure since the first season, to get points instead of to play and to put in, the way that he wants to play. I understand and agree with, you have to win games. You can't keep losing, or things happen. But when you look at a lot of the numbers, United, when they weren't winning points, were probably playing better, just not scoring goals. Now they're picking up points and then not picking up points and falling out of the Champions League while somewhat scoring more goals. And it's a tricky problem, but there's I don't have the answer. Obviously, you got a lot of players coming back from injury, which hopefully will help. But when you're making the choices that are being made, I think you live with that.
Here's the thing. I've spoken to professional footballers about this, and I've asked, what's the biggest difference between a championship player and a top Premier League player? The answer is always the same: consistency.
Mm-hmm.
So there are some amazing players at championship level, League One player, League Two level that are technically superb, brilliant players, but they aren't consistent. And to be consistent in life, you have to be consistent in how you apply your standards off the pitch. It doesn't matter what position you're in, doesn't matter what job you're in. If you are consistent, it's because you are consistently doing the right things. I remember Ferguson said about Leeds when they would play United and they give 100% and they desperately try to win the game, and then they go out next week against Charlton and lose when they're cheating their manager.
Yep.
These are players that are picking and choosing games. We see this in the FA Cup every year. Teams can get up for a game. And there was a couple of things that were said after that game that were really alarming to me. One of them was from Bruno Fernandes, where he said that we thought this would be easy after what happened against Chelsea. This is, to me, an underlying indicator of one of the major problems at United, is that, to me, they're always trying to do the bare minimum. Right. So instead of coming out with the attitude that we're going to come out here flying, we're desperate to win, we're going to give every last drop of effort, we're going to, prepare properly. It's about, how can we do the bare minimum to win this game? Right? Because I don't want to do all that other stuff. We two good performances in a week. No. We've already given you one. We've already felt like after the Chelsea game that we answered every critic that came before us. That now we can go out and take a foot off a paddle and go back to normal and not doing shit and just lackadaisical attitude. You saw it in the first minute with Shaw's back pass to Onana, almost gets caught. Bruno Fernandes with a totally ridiculous ball from left back into midfield, and then the response to that, it was atrocious. There was no intensity. It was just, that's the way it goes. Who cares, right? And to me, when you have inconsistency like that, that's a reflection. I'm not exonerating Ten Hag. Ten Hag has his own issues, right? But when you have a situation where your forward line, your central striker, one, hasn't been able to complete 90 minutes in 3 years. Two,
Yep.
your other central strikers completed 90 minutes 4 times this season, right? Can't play
No
3
goals.
games
Yeah.
in a row, right?
Yep.
Your right winger hasn't scored in over a year or an assist, which is just a total disgrace. Nothing. It's been a year since he scored in the Premier League. You have Marcus Rashford that scored 1 goal all season. Had you have told me at the start of the season we would be sitting in December where our forward line has 1 goal, between Martial, Rice, 2 goals, Martial's goal at Everton. Obviously Garnacho's got his goal, but between Martial, Rashford, and Haaland, we'd be sitting on 2 goals. And I would have found that hard to believe. I would have said, well, one of them must have been out, 2 of them must have been out for a long time, must be a long injury. There's no way they'll have played that many games and not scored. And I know that a big part of this, and this is where I feel Ten Hag has to take responsibility, is that if you play centrally for United, you get no service. I mean, the service. Watch the Spurs game. Son creates 2 goals, beating his player, knocking the ball straight across the box. Doji scores, lovely ball straight across the box. Right? That at United would have ended up in a shot wide, or someone dribbling down the line, holding on to it too long, or what you saw with Diogo Dalot. How many times have we seen Haaland frustrated in the centre, visible frustration from not getting simple square balls that you would expect from your wide players? Put the ball across the box, right?
Yep.
That's what you have a central striker for. And the way that team is playing, and I think this is where Ten Hag really has to take responsibility, is, McTominay's up there because the goals aren't coming from anywhere else. Why can't you get a team to play in a certain way that plays to the strengths of your central striker? And if your wingers can't do that, if your midfielders can't do that, you have a big problem. Okay.
Yep.
One of those wingers you bought in Anthony. And honestly, if I'm a goalkeeper against Anthony and I see him get the ball, I'm just going to walk over to the far right-hand post. I'm just going to sit there and wait for the ball, because that he's cutting inside and putting it to the far post. I mean, there was at one point Anthony cuts inside, shoots, and that was just on the left side. Goes, thanks, mate, because you never put it anywhere else. You never put it anywhere else. The same move, cut inside, shoot, far post, cut inside, shoot. I mean, you have to have more than something about you than that. There's got to be something that goes in the far post. You got to swing a right foot. You got to put something down the middle. There has to be more to it than that.
Yeah. Yeah, well, there's a couple of things. I think you'll find this terribly funny statistic that, like you were talking about here. The last forward to score at Old Trafford for United was?
You mean central striker?
No. The last forward to score at home at Old Trafford for United of any of the forwards. No, it was Jadon Sancho last year in May.
Oh, well, yeah. Well, I'm not counting Rashford as a forward, but
yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, and that's how bad it's been. And what you're saying about consistency and doing the whole job is, I think, a big part of it. Because if you look at United and their inconsistencies and the players, a lot of them get let off the hook very often because they do something well.
Mm-hmm.
So Anthony gets praised for the last few games because he defends well, but he's a right winger. He can go play fullback if he wants to defend well, but he doesn't score, and it's been a year since he scored a goal. You get the same thing across the board. You get the same thing for Luke Shaw, who gets credit for his passing and his progression, but the mistakes he makes defensively, things like that are pretty regular, he gets off the hook for. And I like Luke Shaw a lot, but every single player you'll say, well, they're good at something. They're good at something and they do one thing pretty well. So McTominay comes in and he's scoring goals, but then doesn't do the rest of the game at all. Doesn't do anything in the rest of the game. Bruno Fernandes will pick when he does it and puts a lot of effort in most of the time, but it's always one thing that they can do instead of being an all-around player for the position and doing all of what is necessary. And it's true. I was just thinking about that as you're saying that, that is probably, you could pick that with every single player. And when they're doing something extremely valuable, like when Marcus Rashford is scoring 30 goals, you can get away with it. When you're not, we see what happens this season with every player doing something that you could say they're good at, but not everything. And it can't be enough just to be a good presser. And it can't be enough just to be, someone who attacks and gets shots and passes. They really do have to want to do the entire job. And I don't think that that is part of the attitude. And I understand there's roles and things like that, but I think that is a criticism you could level at every single United player, is that there's maybe half the game that they're good at and the other half they just let slip.
Listen to this, and I owe this to Carl Anka from the Fantastic Talk of the Devils podcast, so credit where it's due. Every single season since Ferguson, where United have finished on 70 plus points, qualified for the Champions League, the following season they finished sixth. Where they're in sixth right now, right? Doing exactly the same thing they're doing right now. No attitude, atrocious. No style of play, no desire. Nobody functioning. See a lot of the same players sulking, a lot of the same everything. And again, I'm not saying that to exonerate Ten Hag, because I do think there's certain parts where when you do what happened against Bournemouth, when that happens, you have to take criticism. I'm sorry. And the fact that they can't create chances for the front line is just, it's no surprise. Weghorst never scored either in the Premier League. Okay, he's not a top striker, but could you at the weekend not? I know Rashford was really poor against Newcastle, but so was Martial. How could you not put Rashford down the middle? Martial has no intention of ever getting to the peak of the guy. Had talent, no doubt about it. Right? He's almost 13 years now, which is unbelievable. Now, United have an option to extend his contract by a year. Anthony Martial gets a contract extension at Manchester United. Burn the football club to the ground. There isn't a more clear case of there's absolutely no way this is the answer. Joe Hugo, when Rashford got his chance against Midtjylland, weirdly enough after Martial was injured in the warm-up, He got a chance, he took it. You cannot tell me that Joe Hugo wouldn't have come in and given United something a little more than that. I mean, I'm sorry. I don't want to dislike a Manchester United player because I've had moments where I've been angry at United players, but my contempt and anger for a guy who doesn't want to break out of a jog. I mean, just take a look at how many times the ball will come across the box. He wasn't making an effort to run across strikers. He wasn't, or defenders would, just no hunger really to get the ball. I'm going,
Yep.
At this point, I blame you, Ten Hag, for allowing that. I'm sorry. And he's not alone, James, because I don't want to single him out because there's a lot more than that. But that to me is unforgivable. And I think that fine if you don't play well, fine if you don't score goals, but to jog through games, I mean, it's just impossible. They just pass around them every single time. There's no pressure on the defenders. There's no, it just looks like you called them be arsed, and I don't know how this is allowed. And the fact that United don't have a striker that can play 3 games in a week or 90 minutes is just defies belief to me. I mean, it is an illustration of just how disgraceful things have been run at that football club for years. It makes me really angry.
Yeah, and I know that, I think it was taken a little bit out of context, to be honest, the quotes that came or the article. Because at first it was like, what is this? And then you look at the quotes and it was a little different because it was more like
Ten Hag naughty with that. They knew what they were doing. They knew that they were clickbaiting a bit with that.
Yeah, because it was saying we're going to decide on the 4 players, and the way it was presented was they're working on extending them, but that's not the same thing. Working on making a decision is different, and I think that outside of Wan-Bissaka, I think Hannibal Mejbri will probably get extended because he's a young player with value. I think all of that's pretty much on hold at the moment anyway, so it's sort of a pointless point. But I think Hannibal Mejbri will get extended. He's a young player. At worst, he can go out on loan. He's going to be a professional footballer somewhere, so he's got value that's worth preserving. They paid 10 million for him. Wan-Bissaka, I think, there's an article that it's sort of stalled at the moment, but I think there's a few reasons for that. I think if you're Wan-Bissaka, you do want to understand your role, why you're not playing again, things like that. That might be part of it moving forward. But I think all contracts are pretty much on hold at the moment. But Victor Lindelof and Anthony Martial, there's no reason to me that they should be extended under any circumstances. You have Harry Maguire, Rafael Varane, and Lisandro Martinez as your center backs. I know they're looking at center backs for both sides, right center backs, left center backs. You have all the names that have come up over time. Todibo. They've looked at players like Ignacio Braithwaite from Everton. I don't see any reason why Victor Lindelof's contract should be extended. He hasn't been good enough. You've been buying center backs every single year, and there's no reason to keep him. Now, I don't think he will be. I think that come summer, it's more likely that Lindelof and at least one of Maguire and Varane will go, depending on changes, depending on manager, depending on a few things, and 2 center backs will be brought in. But that is one of the things I hope will change significantly under essentially new management of the club is just let them go. Let them go and get new players in, get top players in. You don't know what's going to happen with Lisandro Martinez's injury and how he returns from that and all of that. I get that. He'll be back soon, a couple of weeks, it sounds like. But buy competition. Buy someone who's good enough to compete with him so that we don't have this situation again if something does go wrong. Be forward thinking. And I think that is one of the major things that I hope. I think contracts are a big sign of how United have operated and how they've ended up in this position. We've seen it time and time again. Anthony Martial shouldn't have gotten the last contract he got, and he's still here.
I mean, Wan-Bissaka gets his contract extended for me before Dalot.
Yeah, right? I would agree.
And I mean, at least Wan-Bissaka is good at something.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, you stand Wan-Bissaka.
You want to shut down a winger, you can use him to do that job, like that specific role, and he will do it. He will do it well.
Like when they took him off against Galatasaray, you could see that Zaha was ecstatic. All of a sudden, I'm confident. But I would be okay with him keeping Wan-Bissaki's limited going forward. To me, Lindelof, if you get rid of Maguire, or if you get rid of Varane, I'm okay with him being a backup centre-back, because he was fine, in my opinion, as a backup centre-back last season when United needed him on the right-hand side. But he can't be a part of the starting centre-back pairing. It's very difficult to get decent centre-backs beyond the first two that are willing to do third-choice centre-back, fourth-choice centre-back, because most players that are good enough won't do that. So, I wouldn't be devastated if he left, but I'm also not totally against him being a backup centre-back. But obviously, United need much better quality in that.
Yeah.
And of course, we were mentioning about McTominay, who played deep. Part of the problem when you play McTominay deep is the transitions out of midfield, is that he's not really good enough technically with his back to midfield to be able to, like you see with Manu, who is he's very aware of his space, he's very aware of what's around him, he's technically good enough to get out of tight holes on the half turn, and he's very aware of what's behind him. I mean, if you look at that ball from Fernandes, McTominay was weak in that first in Bournemouth.
He didn't try.
Should be cutting that off, because if you look at where the danger is going to come from, you should know that this is not where you want to give the ball away. So get my body between the ball and the player. And then McTominay just kind of threw a lazy leg out, and Bournemouth took the ball. But this is, to me, a big part of the problem with playing him deeper. He started scoring goals for Scotland. United obviously needed goals. When they were talking about getting rid of him, my thought was, well, he gives you something on set pieces. I think if you're behind in a game, you want to bring him on for the last 15, 20 minutes, fine. Okay? But totally. The problem for McTominay is, and we said this on last week's podcast, you have to play him in that mount position where you play him really high, but then, of course, that leaves you so wide open in midfield. And Ten Hag in my opinion, Ten Hag United's midfield gets dominated every single week, no matter who they play. And, teams look at that midfield and say, this is where we can get at them. They don't score a lot of goals from open play. So you don't really have to worry about, them cutting you open through the middle. And so if you look at how they're scoring goals, I mean, they did score 2 goals from open play against Chelsea, but for the most part, they're talking about a piece of magic somewhere, a mistake somewhere, but it's not really fluid play that's cutting you open. So you just think that for Ten Hag, this is a major problem. I mean, if you look at that back four, James, and the whole team that played against at the weekend against Bournemouth, back four was a right back that Mourinho signed in Dalot. It was a centre back that Solskjaer signed, another centre back that Van Gaal signed, and a left back that Spurs weren't going to register in their team. Right, a midfield of McTominay that was brought through by Mourinho. Bruno Fernandes that was bought by Solskjaer, Amrabat, who was brought in on loan with an escape clause, a break clause. Anthony that was signed by him, Garnacho that's a young kid out of the academy, and Anthony Martial that was signed by Van Gaal. I mean, it is a total disgrace. So many of those players are still there. Players that, by the way, throughout their entire career at United have been surrendering in games and getting away with it. Any serious football club would have gutted them out. Not in there, right? 7 or 8 of them would not be there. They're still at United. And, when Ten Hag says they're not good enough to be consistent, he's correct. But that is a really poor team.
Yeah, it is. And part of the problem here is, obviously, I think we've wanted to avoid getting into. There's certainly a little bit of a turn in the attitude towards Ten Hag from the fans this weekend, from what I could tell. There's always people who are calling for the manager out and things like that. I certainly think it was quite emboldened at the weekend. I mean, in the stadium, out of the stadium, not the people who remain and all of that, but a lot of the people who left and a lot of the general thing on there. I think the problem that Ten Hag has now under new management is that in a lot of ways, I don't think he's going to be sacked right now or anything like that. I
I
don't
don't
think
think
he's
there's anyone to
particularly
sack him,
close. I don't think there's anyone with the appetite or the money to sack him at the moment.
or I don't think
Anyway,
there's anyone in a position. United don't even have a
yeah,
CEO
who's
right
going to
now.
make, Patrick Stewart's not sacking a manager. It's not happening. Okay. That's a difficult situation. Now, obviously, you have last week, which we'll talk about in a minute. Blanc and Brailsford were at Old Trafford meeting with them per David Ornstein's reports for the day. And are likely going to be advising pretty regularly on a lot of what's going on, even while we're waiting. But regardless of that, I think I've mentioned before that as I kind of get it, I would consider this season to be a bit of like a job interview in a sense for Eric Ten Hag, because he's going to have to convince that he's the right man going forward, not just by default, similar to anybody who is in the position of power at Manchester United. John Murtaugh is going to have to convince why he should stick around at Manchester United as INEOS come into there. All of the players are going to have to do the same thing. This is a job interview for many of them. And one of the problems I think that you have here a little bit is that I think there's probably about 9 or 10 players that you would say you likely need to shift out of United at the moment, at the minimum, right? But that are pretty urgent. There's some you could say if they were a backup, it's okay. Like you said with Victor Lindelof, it's not to me an urgency that Victor Lindelof has to leave, but he does have to be a backup week in and week out.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of players who should not be there. The problem is there's a good chunk of players who've come in under his in the last couple of years as well that do need to leave as well. Casemiro is pretty much at the end of his rope. Ericsson is just from age wise and health wise, there's just no way he can be starting games for Manchester United. Anthony at this point is a massive failure of a signing. He just is. He just is, and it's a lot of money, and it's like fine, the recruitment has to be changed, all of that, but you're going to have to start getting rid of players you just signed as part of this turnover, no doubt about it. Because if you were to go into next season even totally healthy, and the jury's out on Mason Mount, I think Rasmus Højlund will come good, but it's going to be time. He needs time, and part of the problem is you're looking at it and saying we've got to sign all the same positions you just signed players in. Not you, Ten Hag, but you, the people who are there. Ten Hag, Murtaugh, everybody responsible for this. We're going to have to come in and we're going to have to get a right winger. We're probably going to have to get another striker. We're probably going to have to get another defensive midfielder, maybe 2 midfielders, and another center back. These are all positions that players have been brought in over the last 2 years. And they're going to have to redo all this work, essentially. So I don't think at the moment the job interview is going particularly well for Ten Hag and for a lot of players in terms of their future.
It's a big problem for Ten Hag, James, when 2 of his forwards that cost around 150 million haven't scored a single goal. I'm sorry, that's just not good enough. It's nowhere near good enough. And so when you're sitting there with an 85 million pound winger and the 72 million pound forward, centre striker, and as I said, I like Højlund, but at some point he has to start scoring.
Mm-hmm.
At some point, I know you don't get a whole host of chances, but at some point you have to start scoring, right? Ronaldo, when he was playing centrally for United, was, scored 24, 25 goals. And the biggest issue was he wasn't pressing. At some point, Rasmus Højlund has to start scoring, okay? Because this is Manchester United. It's just, he's 20. Nicholas Jackson scoring goals, all those other forwards scoring goals. I know he's only scored 6, but 6 more than Højlund. I know that he's done okay in the Champions League, but he at some point he has to start taking chances, and he's had decent chances. His service is poor, I admit, but I think you have a serious problem for Ten Hag in getting sympathy whenever 2 of the 3 forwards are yours, and Garnacho is very, very talented young player. He's only 19. He has to be given time too, but he's still chipping him with goals. but the central striker situation is a major problem.
Yeah.
And when you're looking at a -3 goal difference by December, I mean, if you look at how few goals United have scored in comparison to the rivals, I mean, in many cases they're half the number of goals. That is just unacceptable. And for Ten Hag, I support him. I like him. But these are legitimate questions that if it was at any other top club, he'd be sacked. And I accept the fact that any other top club doesn't function like United, but that is not acceptable. Like, I mean, at some
Yeah.
point, you have to start. Last season, and most of his signings were exceptional. Ericsson, I don't have a problem getting rid of because he cost free. He was free, and
Yeah,
it
that one's
was a stopgap. Amrabat, Regulon, all that, no problems. But it's the major signings for me. The Mason Mount one is a big head scratcher, and the fact that Anthony, I mean, I don't see any development in him. He's still doing that annoying, stupid foot rollover when United are breaking away.
Oh,
His final ball is terrible. He gives the ball away a lot, passing the ball inside midfield. If you look at McTominay's goal against Chelsea, it comes from Garnacho putting the ball in on the head. His first goal comes from Garnacho going down the line, pulling the ball back. But you get nothing from the right. There's no creativity. There's no goal threat. He's not crossing the ball. He's not creating. I mean, my thought was once you need to get a central striker, his assists will go up. But actually, they haven't, and we're still sitting waiting on him a year and a half in, saying some point he's going to find the form that shows why United paid for him. And I don't know. Are we sitting in
I
Nicholas?
don't know that it's a form issue, is it? It just unfortunately, it seems like it's just he's limited. You take the last game and Chelsea game and quite a few games. The thing you mentioned specifically, he'll be on the break on the right. He could get down to the line and put a ball in with his right foot. I don't think he can.
He won't touch
So
the
he
ball.
stops and ball rolls it, lets the defense catch up, runs into traffic, puts it into a busy area, and that's it. And you just it's like a hope and a prayer that you're going to get a lucky bounce or something out of it, and it's not coming. And in every game, there's 3, 4, 5 times he could drive it to the line, put it on his right foot, and not only would that help in those instances, but would of course make him less predictable for the defense too, because they know exactly what he's doing every time, to where they don't even really have to defend him anymore. Like you were saying with the goalkeeper.
Even the penalty against Chelsea, for that, is the result of him cutting inside on his left foot and going for the same shot every single time. I'm like, this is unbelievable to me that this is professional footballer. I don't want to say a one-trick pony, but I've never seen him score a goal any other way. I've never seen him. Every single goal has been the same goal. Every single one. I mean, I think about the one at City. I think about the one at Arsenal. I think about the one against Barcelona. I think about the one. I think he scored against Forest, didn't he? I'm going. They're all the same goal.
Yeah.
I mean, and anytime the ball's fallen on his right foot, I've seen him straight through on goal, miss chances because he just is not confident. Lots of footballers are one-footed players, but to me, with Anthony, they always know. I know he's playing on the right wing, so it's conducive to cutting inside. But to me, I'm really out of patience with this because United badly need someone that can contribute. They badly need someone that can tip in the goals. They badly need someone that's going to create. And even someone less talented that says, you know what, I'm just going to get the ball down and going to put the ball in early.
Yeah.
I'm going to try and.
Well, we saw it with Pellistri. He's not the answer, but he came on a couple times and made some impacts in a few games just doing that. The bare minimum of running in there and getting in. He missed plenty of chances too in the last few games, but he's not the answer. But he was able to create some goals just by doing what you said, getting down to the line and putting it in.
If you're a central striker, you need two things. You need wingers to put the ball in, and you need fullbacks to put the ball in.
Yeah.
So, if you look at what United have been playing with at fullback, it constantly changes. 1 week it's Luke Shaw, 1 week it's Regulon, maybe it's Amrabat, and then you've got Dallo and Wan-Bissaka on the right. Neither of whom are particularly good at going forward and putting the ball in the box. You're going, they can't cut you up and down the middle because their midfield is poor. Where's the creativity coming from for someone like Hoyland to score goals for any central striker?
Yep.
I mean, I just feel that. I mean, I've no doubt that if Hoyland was playing for Liverpool or City or something, he'd be sitting on 6, 7 goals too. No doubt,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But the fact is that I get so frustrated at United watching them every week, because even when they do manage to put the ball in the box, they wait way too long, and it either hits the first defender, right,
Yep.
or it's nowhere near its target. This is really frustrating, because where does the goals come from? And it's just, that's something that Ten Hag has to take responsibility for. That's something I would expect a year and a half in his teams to be able to find a way to beat you more than one way. And United have many
Yeah.
ways they can lose, but United don't have a lot of ways they can win.
Yeah, exactly. It's the patterns of chance creation, things where you say, okay, we know we can do these things to score goals, and it's got to come from somewhere. And I think Ahmad Diallo is going to get a chance on the right side when he's back in a couple of weeks. I'm not saying that it's like the right answer, because now you're relying on a kid who's really never played for United. He had a real good season on loan last year, but if that's what you're relying on, because you're not getting output from anywhere else, but it still can't even really be individual. There's got to be more ways to create, and that is an issue to solve, and it's not going to get any easier, of course, because Bayern Munich tomorrow,
Before we move on, can I
Anfield.
ask you a
Yeah,
question?
go ahead. Yeah.
What did you make of Bruno Fernandez's yellow card?
I tweeted, and I don't actually usually criticize Bruno's attitude and energy too much. I get some of the things on the body language and the whinging and stuff, but some of the best players have been a bit whiny on the pitch in general, in terms of how they do things, as long as he's putting the effort in. The yellow card, though, I tweeted a guy jumping off a ship, and that's how it felt to me at the time. I felt like he was jumping ship, to be quite honest, on the moment. I think he knows what's going on there. I'm not saying he's trying to get suspended for a game, okay? I'm not trying to give that allegation or anything like that at all. I think that would be unfair, to make that an accusation like that. But I think he'd be a lot more cognizant of the moment if he was really, really wanted to lead the team into Anfield and show something. And so it's very disappointing to me. I think that is really disappointing.
I think for me, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt and say that what he did is entirely in character for Bruno Fernandes, because I've seen him do it so many other times before, and probably Anfield wasn't even on his mind at that point.
Yeah, you're probably right.
That doesn't mean that it shouldn't be. Maybe it
Yeah.
doesn't mean that he shouldn't be sitting there thinking, do you know what, let's make sure whatever happens, this game is gone. I'm available for next week because we need
Correct.
to
Yeah.
respond. That's where you have to be intelligent. To me, he was obviously frustrated, I'm sure, with himself, because he was poor too. But I think that really is where Fernandes should be a bit smarter and making sure he doesn't get a yellow card. I mean,
He's not the only one.
never been so dreading the game at Anfield
I
in
know.
my entire life watching this football club, and I fear, James, that it feels like when Mourinho went there and United lost comfortably, and that was the end. And I just feel that a number of those players have already accepted it's okay to lose there, and they know we're not going to take responsibility, because they don't take responsibility for any of this, right? No matter what they say in public, they always have someone else to blame inside United. And I really worry about United going there, because this team has shown time and time again that they're okay with losing, and they're okay with losing badly, and they're okay with having their integrity questioned. They're okay with all of that. And I have no confidence that they're going to go out and put a decent performance in, even against Bayern, because as soon as they go a goal behind, you just see the whole attitude just goes, well, it's not my fault, it's his fault, his fault, his fault. So, it's a big concern. Sorry, so you switch your attention to Bayern and quickly talk about Liverpool for the weekend.
Yeah. I mean, the Bayern game, it has obviously it's potentially a meaningless game in a lot of ways anyway. Not that they should know that or would know that while playing, because it's dependent, even if they win, on the result in the other game ending in a draw for United to qualify for the next Champions League round, which unfortunately I feel is rather unlikely if they beat Bayern in the first place. They obviously are capable of scoring goals against Bayern. They did so before. But I think that this ties into Bayern. This ties into to Anfield at the weekend. I think the approach to both should be the same. The focus, I think, really, really has to come from Ten Hag on locking things down a bit. I really think they just, if there's ever a time to be a bit pragmatic and say, it's got to be this. These have to be these moments because let me put it this way too. I think, it's not giving necessarily the benefit of the doubt, but I do think that a lot of athletes mentally aren't that strong. I mean, if you look at the reality of it, I'm not saying they aren't because a lot of them work really hard, but at the same time, you have a bunch of young people, and it's very easy to get shaken confidence wise and lose complete belief in everything. It's very easy to do it, especially when you're lacking in a lot of leadership in the area. One of the things that Solskjaer did really well uh, at times was, there was a game, his second season, right? Second full season, but they lost 6-1 to Tottenham before the international break. Was one of the worst games I've ever seen them put in, right? They lost 6-1 to Tottenham. And right after that game, after the international break, they came back and they played really solid, and I mean compact defensively. I mean quite literally compact defensively. They just essentially circled the wagons and said, okay, we're just going to make it difficult to score, and we got to focus on something we can do well, make it really difficult to score. And they built upon that throughout the season, and it ended up being quite a good season. And I think that I remember at the time reading about it, where he probably learned it from as well, was there was the loss from it was during a title season that United under Sir Alex lost, was a 6-0 something huge, right, against City or somebody like that in there.
They lost 6-1 at home to City.
Yeah, and they talked about, there's an interview or there's some articles that talk about it from some of the players where he talked about just from that point focusing on getting clean sheets, to clean things back up, to get back into the swing of things. And you don't usually lose 6-1 in a season where you win a title. That's not a normal thing to do, right? But he did. Solskjaer got second that year. And I think that this is the only way for United to go forward, is to focus on trying to do something you can control. But not only that, doing that takes maximum effort. It takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot of caring. And if you cannot do that, then there's no point trying to do anything else. So that would be my focus and my hope.
Here's the thing.
I know you want to play expansive football and all of that, but batten the hatches a little bit, and I'm not saying you're not going for a win, but you're going for it by being robust defensively and knowing you do have the quality to score against another team individually as well.
In his slight defense, 1 week he's being criticized for not being Postecoglou by playing attractive football. Just do it, mate. Just go on the front foot, and then like someone, there's for both. I remember when Ericsson was asked earlier in the season about why United kept conceding after they scored, and he said concentration, focus. So in order to defend properly with discipline, you have to stay focused. You have to be well organized, and you have to be determined to get a result. Attacking players don't want to defend. Okay, they hate defending. Okay, and it shows in how they defend. Like it goes against their instinct. They don't want to spend any energy defending. Okay, so you have to have a really defensive lineup to pick. The problem is if it goes wrong, you'll get slaughtered because you came to lose the game, in my opinion. So in Ten Hag, does he lose having a goal, or does he lose trying to keep the score down? Because to me, if you go to Anfield a year and a half into a reign just to keep the score down, that's a really bad look. Might be the pragmatic thing to do, given where United are at, but I'm looking at United team going, would I trust that United team defended at Anfield for 90 minutes? I mean, I would say that if they do that, which they may do it anyway, they're going to concede really early with something stupid, right? With giving the ball away in a stupid area, with not concentrating on a corner, not concentrating on a free kick, something really stupid, because United give goals away that nobody else gives away. And they've been doing, I mean, the perfect example is the weekend. Look at even the fourth goal, right? Which is just unbelievable. Look at the goals against Galatasaray. I mean, you can pick any game this season we have conceded goals. Copenhagen, Bayern Munich, they defy belief that they happen at the professional level. There's just so many things wrong. Look at the goals they conceded at home to Brighton. I mean, unbelievable. I remember Besiktas a year away. How did United concede those goals? I remember Leipzig away. How did United concede? I mean, it just was on and on. With Solskjaer, the Spurs game, so many goals where you're like, this just defies belief. I mean, United had a 5-0 at home, lost 5-0 at home to Liverpool under Solskjaer, then lost again to City. They just lost against Leicester in the FA Cup before that. And you're going, this is a consequence of players not doing the basics, not doing the basic things.
And that's why I recommend it. Not because, like, if there were 2 games I would not blame Ten Hag for sticking 11 men behind the ball, would be right now. Simply because, frankly, I feel that if there's any hope for the rest of the season, he's got to get them to do the basics and insist upon it first, because you can't build on anything else. And so, because I'm the same way, last season, I had hoped we'd play more expansive football for most of the year because it was his first season and say it's a free hit. That was my view on last season. I know that wasn't for a lot of people, and that's part of the problem at United as well, is that it should have been, if you're really committing to it, you should have said, look, your first season is essentially a free hit. Play expansive football, play your way, and build upon it. In your second season, now you do have that exact problem, that exact dilemma. Can you go back to playing basic defensive football on the counter without getting criticized? Well, you're going to lose your job the other way, because we can't do the basics right. We cannot defend in transition. And I would say that I feel that there's a path forward if you would just insist on the basics. Because if they're not going to do that anyway, they're not going to win playing the other way. If they can't do the basics, they're not going to win playing the other way. It's not going to happen. They're going to fluke some results, but they're going to keep losing, and you're not really going to gain anything out of it. And that's all I'm saying that's why for me in this case, honestly, against Anfield, they put 11 behind the ball, Marcus Rashford up top, and said, we're just going to send him, running at the defense every time we win it back. So be it, honestly. Let's do the basics and defend well and show me you can do that or not. And
they can't though.
I know, but they have to. Then it's pointless. You know what I mean? I'm just saying there's no point if they can't do the basics.
And then for me, though, this is where the responsibility falls on the players. Because if Ten Hag was sacked on Friday and another manager took United to Anfield, there should be enough common sense amongst that team to be able to play with discipline. I mean, they've been playing football their whole lives. They play for different managers. They know how to hold shape. They know how to sense of danger. They know how to do the basics that will keep you competitive in a game of football. That's all you have to do is stay competitive. I mean, you look at the way Fulham played against Liverpool. United will be nowhere near that, right? That not that they don't have the ability, but the players don't really have the desire, right? They don't really care. And when you're looking at players giving goals away that defy, but I mean, like I said, the fourth goal is just, and United got lucky that didn't count. The second goal where Dalot just stands and watches the guy cross the ball. The first goal where the ball's clipped inside, knocked down the line, pulled back, Solanke still miles, a mark, puts a ball. You're like, this is a disgrace. This is absolutely. I don't care who your manager is. Okay, when you're a professional football and you walk onto that football pitch. I expect you to know enough, to have enough experience and game knowledge to know what positions they occupy. I mean, the third goal going, there's no one knows the zonal marking, and is it Myanmar? There's no organization. There's no one in the back going, okay, this is what we do. Okay, and I mean, to me, criticize Ten Hag, deserves that. Mourinho tried to play pragmatic football and hold Rashford and his wingers really deep,
Yeah.
right? Because
Yeah.
he didn't trust them to get back, and the players hated it, right? Then they get set free under Solskjaer, and then they didn't like him because he was too nice. And so to me, it's like it's not that they just don't have the desire to win, to go to Anfield and be disciplined, and to them it's like they've already they've already found a way to be comfortable with the fact that it's not their fault they're losing. Because I guarantee you that there's at least 5 or 6 of those players in that team that don't think it's their fault that United are losing. They think it's somebody else's fault. And it
Yeah.
shows in everything that they do. So there'll be players taking the field at Liverpool next weekend. We'll go, if we lose today, it's not my fault. Okay,
Yeah.
it's his fault. It's their fault. It's the trainer's fault. It's Ten Hag's fault. It's the training. It's the how hard we're running. It's the fact that he's not nice. It's the fact that he all of that, right? And why not? Because they've been doing it for years and they've got away with it for years. I mean, we just read out how many of these players that started the game against Bournemouth transcend managers of the last 10 years.
Yep.
So why wouldn't they do it again?
Yeah, well, agreed, and so I guess we'll see. Unfortunately, though, it doesn't spell well either way for anybody
Yeah.
involved. I mean, that's kind of where it is. We can't. I don't think Ten Hag can survive another 7-0 or worse. I don't think he
Well,
can.
I mean, I would actually appreciate more if that happened if he resigned. 'Cause I don't think there's anyone there to sack him. But to me, if I
Yeah,
was,
agreed,
I would
agreed.
probably say, like, if I can't get you to do the basics, I'm wasting my time here,
Yep,
and I'm go. And in that situation, the players would be under enormous pressure. Now the
yep,
fans would, because if Ten Hag gets sacked, they can say, well, it was his fault. But if he resigns and says,
yeah,
I can't get you to give 100%, the players would have nowhere to hide, and I would appreciate that. But we will see. All right, man. Thanks for doing this as always. Thanks to all of you
yeah.
folks for all the downloads, retweets, everything else. I will be back next week, and God knows what will happen in the next 7 days. So we'll see. Hopefully, United have got 2 decent results. I'm not holding my breath, but we'll see. All right, take it easy, man. Cheers,
See you
James.
later.
See ya. Bye.